bringing you the latest news from Liberty Athletics. This is the Patriot Fan Zone podcast from 100.7 The Score.
Welcome back in. We have, I promise, 30 minutes left. Me and Joe Sexton will not try to cut it off early like we've done at least once that I can remember. We're going to talk Patriot football, and we're going to focus on football with these guys because they've got a big one coming up here. They had a big one last week, took care of business against Monahans 49-0. I listened to a little bit of that, and I think methodical is a good word. Introduce you guys here. I suggested you bring these two in. I'm glad you did because we talk about them all the time. We may as well let them talk for themselves.
Right. Go ahead, Coach Newton.
I'm Coach Newton. I'm offensive coordinator, coach our offensive line. And, to answer your question about the other day, I would, for us, methodical is a good word for it. Started off the game with a 14-play drive to start it. Went 94 yards in 14 plays and used up a bunch of time on the clock and scored. So, that's something we've kind of prided ourselves on this year, being physical up front and physical in the run game. And I think in that 14 play we threw it one time. So, really good way to start it for our guys. You never know first time you're in the playoffs and how guys will react. So, really good to get it didn't start great. We had a little mishap on the kickoff return, but the defense got us a turnover and went to work. So it started well for us. So, luckily we were able to kind of put that opening kick behind us and go from there. So it was a good game, good win for us and good win for our kids, and excited for them to get the first playoff win.
I'll hand that to the Knox City legend there. He's already got some airtime tonight.
I don't know about legend, but I'm Coach Toliver. I'm the defensive coordinator. Defensively, methodical was what I like to see. We forced 5 turnovers. Our guys were really up to the task of coming out and being physical and getting after Monahans a little bit. So, sometimes first playoff game, like Coach Newton said, you never know quite what's going to happen and how you guys are going to react. You couple that with playing somebody for the second time in the season, it just makes you nervous. But, we were able to come out, put the fire out, to start the game, get the ball back for the offense and allow them to go on that drive and, just kind of never really look back after that.
Second time this season, third time in like 9 months, right? Because you played them last year, so there's a lot of familiarity. Joe, did you just kick your feet up the other day and let these guys?
That's what I've done all year. That's I think Coach Richards was talking about hiring people that are smarter than him. I've hit the jackpot right here with these two guys. There's when we were talking about getting these guys to come down. To come to Liberty, I was like, man, you got the keys. So, I think the only thing I ever told Coach Newton was like, we got to run counter, and that was about it. And with kind of told Coach Toliver what I was thinking about, and boom, here we go. So it's been a lot of fun to see both these guys take off.
And there's a former Lubbock coach that basically sang your praises when we were talking the other day. He's Joe Cluley at Mount Pleasant, and he was asking me about Estacado. He's got a connection to them, obviously, and he texted me and said Liberty must be really good, and I said yeah, and he said, and Joe hired really good coaches. So yeah, people can tell.
Yeah, I mean that's the most important thing, other than having some pretty good kids,
Jimmy's and Joe's.
You got to have these guys that are, and that's one thing that I like about all of our staff. We're all on the same page, and that's very important to me. And these guys have done. All of our staff has been really good.
You worked with a guy who was pretty good at that, Max Catwinkle. He had a magic touch for
right. I think some of that is I like the way he was the head coach. He wasn't kind of always looking over your shoulder, seeing what you were doing. When he hired you, he trusted you to do a job and expected you to do a job and didn't look over your shoulder to make sure you were doing that job. So that's kind of the way that I feel like I am, and sometimes that's to a fault. But I trust everybody on our staff to do what they're supposed to do.
Well, and I'll steal this from Will Truby. Max also hired a pretty good head coach for the football program when he started the program. So the Patriots are 10-1. So it's just another thing they can cross off their list. First 10-win season. You guys both hit on this. I'll let Joe talk about this. A lot of times you get to the playoffs and you've got some young guys who haven't been in a playoff game, but you can say, hey, we do have these older ones that have. This was different.
Right.
Ain't nobody been in a playoff game. Did you see any nerves? Did you sense any different feelings, or were they just the same guys you'd seen for 10 weeks?
You know, going back to that Bushland scrimmage, I think Coach Newton and I were standing there right before we started that Bushland scrimmage, and he looked at me and he goes, "We may be in trouble. I think we're flat." And you know, these guys are just they're just different. We don't have a whole lot of big rah guys that you've seen guys before the game who kind of got that fake, loud, trying to get everybody going. But our guys just come out, and I've seen that pretty much every game. It's just that same even keel personality that we just get ready and go play.
I'm going to take you way back when you told me that the shock value of going up to Littlefield for that first scrimmage. Maybe that's carried over ever since. Like, okay, we know we got to be better than this.
Well, I think the shock value of that was on the bus on the way over there. They were all like, hey, where are we going? Because none of our guys had ever been out of town. We've I guess some of the sophomores had probably been on road trips before, but none of our freshmen had ever left the Lubbock city limits for a game, and I think they were all looking at each other like, what's about to happen? Well,
they're going out of the city limits Friday. They go to Abilene, 6 p.m., take on Graham in that area round. We'll be back to talk more in the Patriot Fan Zone on 100.7 The Score.
Diving headfirst into Liberty Athletics. You're listening to the Patriot Fan Zone on 100.7 The Score and the 100.7 The Score mobile app.
Welcome back into the Patriot Fan Zone on 100.7 The Score. We talked about methodical. I don't want to go too much of it now. Second shutout in school history, 49-0. Monahans got only 145 yards. It didn't look like they had much going. For all three of you, I'll let Barry, you go first. Joe and I have talked about this. Your offense, one thing that makes it click to me is that the defense can't focus on – now they can focus on Colton, I guess, because he's getting the ball a bunch. But after that, there's a lot of weapons there that they can't really lock in on.
Yeah, that's something I kind of go back, the old Mike Leach days, and he always talked about balanced offense, and everybody thinks that's supposed to be even rushing and even passing. And, he always talked about balance was getting the ball to all the different guys that play. And that's really something that always resonated with me, because it's frustrating for a kid to go out there as a receiver and line up and never get a ball thrown his way. And so, part of that is we're blessed. We got a lot of really good skill kids, and we're, it's probably there's no doubt it's the deepest team I've ever coached, really on both sides, even up front. We've got 10 offensive linemen, and, at any moment I would not hesitate to put any of those guys in. But it is something that's been good. We got guys that don't start for us that would probably start for other teams in our district and be huge contributors and probably pile up a lot of stats. But, that's just really, to me, speaks to our kids. They've bought into what their role is and just go do what they're supposed to do. But they know when their time comes, they go do it at a high level. And, we preach to them about playing to a standard, and so, those guys have all done a really good job upholding that. And so, just again, speaks to our kids and the buy-in to just doing what's the best for the team and, kind of what our culture is and just taking care of each other. So, but yeah, it's definitely something I think people look and, statistically, who you're going to hone in on. Obviously, the quarterback's always going to have eyes on him because, he's a guy that gets the ball first. But we got a lot of guys that we can get it to in a lot of different ways. And so that's what we've tried to do to make it hard on defenses to defend us. And so, I feel like that's something we've been had a lot of success with, and so we're going to continue that. And and then there's obviously times too. There's certain guys you want to see in certain situations. You want that guy to have the ball, but it's also it helps those guys out too when the other guys are contributing. So, but yeah, that's kind of my idea of balanced football, and so our guys have been really good at that.
It's a little bit different for you, Duane. Joe and I have talked about this too. Besides Jackson Thomas, who just every time the pile gets up, he's somewhere nearby. You guys make it hard to run away from anybody because they can run away from one guy, but the way you swarm and get to the ball, you're hard to figure out for an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, we kind of pride ourselves on being physical, and you're right. Jackson Thomas, that position he plays, that middle safety, he's a run fitter on either side of the ball. And the great thing about it is he lines up at 8 to 10 yards, so nobody accounts for him. So he and it helps that he's a very, very, very smart and good football player that has a nose for the football. So. It's kind of tough because, of course, everything begins up front. Like Coach Newton said, we have 6 guys on the D-line. We play a 3-man front. We got 6 guys that I wouldn't hesitate putting the game at any time, and they do a great job. Our starters, they, you can't really run at Isaac and run away from Ryland, because Ryland will chase it down from behind, or you can't run at Ryland and then run away from Isaac, because Isaac will chase it down from behind, and then can't run in the middle because those 2 guys that we rotate in the middle, they make it hard to single block them anytime. Jeremiah and Braxton, those guys have, every week we look at centers and, hey, they can't single block us. They're going to have to spend 2 on 1, so we're going to have somebody that's going to be free, and that just it helps us swarm to the ball.
Apparently you can't throw the ball anywhere close to Becton either, because he's going to figure out the way to do something too.
That's about 50-50, and Coach Newton brought up Mike Leach, so I'm a John Goodner disciple. I play for Coach Goodner, and we're a big swarm defense, so
I hope you don't use the same language I heard him use a few times in practice. So it'll wrap us up in that segment. We'll be back for one more in the Patriot Fan Zone on 100.7 The Score.
Your inside look into Liberty sports. This is the Patriot Fan Zone on 100.7 The Score and the 100.7 The Score mobile app.
Welcome back in. We have one more segment of the Patriot Fan Zone. We're going to focus on what's coming up, and that is Graham at 6 p.m. Friday at Shotwell Stadium. That's on 93.1 Young Country. You guys don't have to go quite as far this week. No Perryton, no. This is an easy drive. This is, as you know from your Lubbock Cooper days, that I could do that drive in my sleep. I mean, that's
right. Going to Abilene, I always try to stay off I-20. I think
like you and Max may have taught me that trick.
Yeah, I like to go through Roby and just come into the north side of Abilene, and there's hardly ever any traffic out there. So I don't know. That's usually the way I go. So
when you get there, there's going to be a really good football team waiting for you. Graham Steers, a lot of tradition, and I thought I'd remember this. They went 4 rounds deep last year. They lost to Brock, one of their district teams, in a very close game last year. Just like everybody else, some guys back, some guys are gone. What about them jumps out when you've looked at them on video?
Well, the first thing you see is when you watch their offense, just how big they are. Their front 5 on offense, their offensive linemen are massive. They're big all the way across the board. So that's a big standout. And just really, everything runs through the quarterback. The quarterback is scary. So we're going to have our hands full slowing him down.
Duane, defensively, what do you guys have to do? Is their quarterback compared to anybody you guys have seen?
He compares to the Perryton quarterback.
That kid was
doesn't
good.
quite throw the ball as well as a Perryton quarterback, but moving and running, he's definitely, just as good, if not better.
And I saw him against you guys and against Estacado. He had a little bit more sense of urgency against Estacado, but he was flinging it all over. if this kid's like that, Joe's.
Yeah, he doesn't throw it quite as good, but and I don't think they have the receivers that Perryton had either. But we definitely have to have a plan for when he breaks the pocket of getting him on the ground, because he makes a lot of things happen with his legs.
Barry, just kind of follow up on what you were talking about a minute ago. When you played Monahans, they'd seen you a bunch, so they knew you had a lot of different guys. Graham's not going to be as aware. They're going to know on video that you have. How can that be an advantage for you guys to do some things that maybe they aren't prepared for?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this time of the season, when you get in the playoffs and you trade every game you have, and it can kind of get muddled together. But for us, we kind of focused on the last 3 games, and and then on some games that some teams that do some stuff similar to us. But defensively, these guys are really good. They're watched some film with the linemen this morning, and one of the first comments they made was these guys do a really good job pursuing the ball, and so they play hard. I think that there's some things that we feel like we can take advantage of as long as we go. We kind of got a simple process to us. It's all about just take care of the football and execute, and play good, disciplined, fundamental football. And so I feel like if we do that and play to a high standard, that we can beat anybody. Now granted, it's going to be a challenge. Their secondary, it's a little, it's a little awkward of a defense that what they run. So we had a really good day of workout today, and kids, we put on a couple little wrinkles here and there. This time of year, you always have little adjustments, and so thought the kids did a great job today. So I'm excited. Our guys have competed well all year, and I feel like we'll go out Friday night and do the exact same thing. And again, if we just do things to our standard and play the way we're capable, I think we'll be fine. It'll be a challenge. I think it certainly won't be I don't think it'll be a 49-0 deal by no means. These guys, as you said, have a lot of tradition. They know how to win, and they have high expectations. And so, we got to go out and just do what we do and make this about us and not anything else. And again, I'm excited to see our guys compete again.
And Joe, we've talked a lot about how other sports have helped you guys. This is the district, and these teams are the ones where a lot of seasons have ended since you guys got to 4A last year. Your guys don't necessarily think about that, but they know when they say Graham, they're going to know those guys are legit, that they're going to have to play well.
We talked about that this morning. One of the first things we talked about this morning was, they knocked us out of the baseball playoffs last year, so it kind of fits right in with our redemption tour that everybody's been talking about. So I'm sure some of those guys that play baseball are still on this team. So our guys are going to be familiar with them, and they know that they compete at a high level, and we're going to have to compete at a high level also.
When you talked about them being big, the first thing that thought to my head is they looked like offensive linemen on the baseball field last year. So if those are some of the same guys, then absolutely they've got some beef.
Well, they definitely have some big boys up front. So that's going to be a big challenge for us, trying to slow those guys down.
Patriots got first playoff win in school history last week. They take aim at number 2 Friday night, 6 p.m. at Shotwell Stadium. That'll be on 93.1 Young Country. We'll be back tomorrow night in the high school fan zone on 100.7 The Score.